What's up, everybody, and welcome to PlayStation Fix. We got episode 51, and my name is Will Robinson, and joining me, as always, is Kyle Prawl.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for the introduction, as always.
Yeah. So we've got. Initially, when we were prepared for this one, I thought it was going to be a pretty slow week, but there's some pretty good gems, I think, that were buried or underneath a lot of the fluff of news.
Yeah, it wasn't the easiest search, but you seemed fairly excited heading into things, so
Yeah. Well, I think
feel free.
I think it'd be good. Well, I'll start with one that'll be an easy starting point, I think, for the two of us. Was that there was an initial speculation that there was going to be some kind of announcement happening coming from Square Enix and Marvel, and we thought maybe that was going to be Kingdom Hearts 3, like more
Sure.
Marvel worlds and stuff like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
no, it's a surprise of everyone after an initial the announcement of Lord of Vermilion 4, a sequel to the arcade-based fantasy collectible card game on its Japanese website.
hmm
We got something. Something that'd be fairly interesting. I want to know what your take is on this, obviously, because I'm bringing it up. But Square Enix and Marvel announced that they are going to be working together to be making a multi-game, just multi-game partnership is what they're doing with based on the Avengers.
And
And
yeah, there's some interesting studios working on it as well. I think that's what
yeah,
threw people with the announcement is that everybody saw Square Enix, and your mind naturally gravitates to the Japanese developer, not the Western publishing arm.
yeah.
Um, so that's super interesting. But I think like
Well,
this is
let's mention who they were first. We got
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal.
So
And
basically, the new Tomb Raider reboot studio in Crystal Dynamics, and then Eidos Montreal, of course, Deus Ex is what
yeah,
they're most
so
recently best known for.
yeah, this makes it really interesting to me.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Like,
I
I don't
mean,
know if this is gonna be. See, this is the thing. Right now, they have the pedigree to potentially take the lead as the best comic-based video game franchise. Like, I honestly think that that could happen. They have to beat the Arkham games, which is no short order.
no, no, of course not.
But I
But yeah,
just,
I mean, they each bring really interesting skill sets to the table. Again, looking at the last 5 years, which is really, as far as these studios' identity, I think that's what's most relevant. Crystal Dynamics has been making like really, really solid action adventure games in the new Tomb Raider series with Tomb Raider and then Rise of the Tomb Raider,
mhm.
which, a lot of people kind of deride them for being Uncharted clones, which Uncharted was itself kind of inspired by Tomb Raider's, dungeon diving, but at their core, they are extremely polished adventure games with really great platforming and amazing
Mhm.
visuals. So Crystal D is bringing that. God, Crystal D, that just made me think of Triple D, Guy Fieri. They're bringing this action pedigree, this adventure pedigree, which makes sense for some characters, right? I could see it like a Hawkeye game oh gosh, what is Scarlett Johansson's character? Black Widow, a
Yeah.
Black Widow game that fits in with those action vibes. And then on the other side, you have Eidos Montreal, where I naturally think of Deus Ex and how it's very dialogue heavy, it's choice based, it's an RPG with
Mhm.
somewhat deep leveling systems, and that makes me think of Iron Man with software upgrades and customizing your suit in certain ways with, some level of dialogue and choice. I mean, it'd be really interesting because the
Mhm.
movies we think of the Avengers, we think of the movies, most people do anyway, and those are such like any movie, it's such a linear adventure, but I do think that there's pretty huge potential for like an Avengers mystery of some kind, like kind of like a sort of a
Right.
conspiracy type thing
Well,
going on
we
with the
did get to
Deus
see
Ex.
a little teaser trailer that was released from that.
hmm
Uh, that basically didn't show anything. That didn't show any characters, but it showed references to the Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America. Showing pieces. Well, they showed like a busted out like heavy duty metal door, and they show like every the debris everywhere and stuff busted up. Then saying you saw Thor's hammer sitting there on the bunch of rocks, and then like
hmm
Iron Man's gauntlet all crushed up and just kind of flickering, and then the shield buried under some rubble. And the it ended the trailer with a hashtag reassemble.
Mm.
So
Which, That
This isn't like an origin story start off point, which I'm if they're going to be doing this, I'm really happy they're not doing that because we have enough of that world building and stuff in the movies. They can
yeah,
continue
definitely.
on from a completely new point, and it seems like it seems like they're treating this more as its own continuation of them, like it's its own movies basically. It's like seems like it's going to be part of the same cinematic universe, more almost like building upon what's already there and not retelling it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, or really a question mark, because Marvel has been making these steps. I mean, their whole push now is pick a developer that's really, really good at what they do to our characters, treat our characters properly. So they went with Telltale for a Guardians of the Galaxy game, Insomniac for a open world Spider-Man game, and now these two studios, because clearly, and I think this speaks to Marvel's care for this new foray into video games, is that they're kind of three for three when it comes to picking a studio that does something really well, and it says to me that Marvel has a certain vision going
Hmm.
into that partnership, which then leads us to course. So the reassemble, yeah, that makes me think of Mass Effect actually, or
Hmm.
or at least in the context of a game, it's like you have this onus on you to go around and re-recruit your party members for some
Right.
kind of big showdown.
And this that actually to me raises the biggest question is who do you play as?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
if it's basically what they're setting up from the teaser, at least what I'm getting is that you're everyone's it's come the Avengers are in complete disarray. They're all maybe I don't know if hiding would be the correct term for some of them, but I mean they're all kind of split up and they were handily defeated by something, and now it's the point where they have to get back in touch with each other and get things going again. And like they ended with Captain America's shield, so I mean it would make sense if you're doing that. I'd almost imagine that it well actually that's the other thing. Is it going to be a single player or is it going to be multiplayer? Because if it's single player, they almost have to have you play as each hero as it's going on because nobody's going to want to be restricted to one of these like basically they're all major characters.
Yeah.
They're all the lead character of the franchise essentially. So I don't even how would you even balance that? Because it's like we were talking about is like Eidos Montreal with Deus Ex. They're very heavy in building your character a certain way and how you want to play it. They can't do that in an Avengers game really. They can give you a little bit of range in how you want to build that person, but there's already been predetermined parameters on how that character is supposed to be.
Yeah.
So you can give like little deviations here and there and pick a couple things, but you can't make somebody go really crazy and make Iron Man essentially unrecognizable with a bunch of random upgrades. But then also you can't have a deep system if you want people to experience the multiple characters.
Yeah, I think it sort of depends on how they treat this new video game universe, whether it is truly an integration into the cinematic universe or if it's something else entirely, because they could well, not make up, but they could build a pretense for things being different in the game universe if they kind of explicitly say, like, we don't consider the two to be conjoined, but yet that doesn't feel very modern Marvel. Like I feel like everything Marvel does is really intertwined. And
Hmm.
yet you look at Spider-Man and his suit is clearly different. His voice actor is different, and so you gotta yeah, it's almost I don't know. I think they'd have to go into it saying these characters are inspired by and clearly we want it to resonate with players in the same way that the movie characters do. Like we want
Hmm.
you to think about the movies while you're playing, but we want the freedom to, bend the rules a little bit, I guess, or
Hmm.
have room for new storylines that don't necessarily fit with the canon.
Yeah, I think that would be best too. Just because obviously they're not going to get that movie cast to do basically to do a true continuation off of the movies. It'd be great to have that basically treat that as canon for this new multiplayer or not multi game partnership. That's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. But have its own well, it's going to have its own unique cast, but then basically build that off as if those are the true characters of this kind of alternative take or this deviation of it. But yeah, there's just I feel like it makes sense. Well, for one thing, I'm really glad that they stuck with just four for the time being. I mean, they stuck with Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, and Thor.
Yeah, like the big
And
guys.
so they're containing it more instead of like here's everybody all at once, and then you just like that's all guaranteed to set it up to fail. I would think, just trying to having that many characters and trying to do justice to all of them in the first game
Hmm.
would be just a disaster. So I still think it's going to be incredibly challenging with the four characters, depending. So it depends on what
Yeah,
kind of focus they get. I have to feel like you're going to be. I feel like you're going to have a starting point. Was it Black Widow that was talking over during the teaser? I think it was. Um, but
I'm not sure.
you have to have somebody initiating the story, and then I feel like it's gonna change. Basically, you're gonna do like this is where they are now, and then you play as that person in that world in that setting, and like in that or that environment that they're in, and whether they're in hiding or if they're in some other part, or this is like Iron Man, or like Tony Stark working in his workshop or something. And dealing with a bunch of business guys trying to hassle him and all this stuff, like I think that could be really cool. Like with the Eidos perspective on that, where it's just like thinking like Adam Jensen sitting in his apartment and then getting phone calls and different things like that. Really cool.
Right.
Like you're just like he's just like sitting there working on stuff. He keeps getting bothered, and you're walking around his shop. You're doing looking, checking the computer or something. You see what something on the news comes up, and you're like, oh god, we got to get in touch. Or like, and then like, well, they did. Yeah, it wasn't these in the newer Marvel ones when they first got Hulk, or when or there was this which one was there was one where it was Mark Ruffalo's like Bruce Banner. He was like out in like some village somewhere and like working on stuff and trying not to get angry, and like you see him like out there and like dealing with it, and all of a sudden you like see this rage meter or something coming up, and then like there's a lot of cool ways they could spin it to make it really really cool. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, it also calls into question what Square's intention was behind getting both studios involved, because this is a multi-part series, and I don't know if it was confirmed one way or the other if both studios are going to work on each game or if they're going to kind of oscillate between the two.
oh sure,
But
like a Call of Duty type thing.
yeah, like that was sort of the impression I took away, only because the studios are so different, and it's
Yeah,
not, as far as I know, they've not had any major collaborations before. It just so happens that Square Enix owns both of them.
right.
Um, which, that I mean that could be an interesting thing too, where we get like an action game with more of the action-based characters, and then we go to the maybe something that's a little more contemplative, like your Tony Stark or your Shield operatives doing kind of more the RPG
Yeah,
dialogue-based thing.
and then this is the other thing too is that we're talking about the pedigree of these two studios, but then if they are both working on this for multiple games, then those studios are completely tied up for the next several years, at least. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
so
Well,
we wouldn't. I mean, unless they can do two projects side by side. I mean, like so much for seeing another Deus Ex anytime soon or anything like
yeah,
that, or like it's just like that. That was something I didn't even think about when starting this.
yeah. I mean, I think there's, well, hopefully that's kind of baked in here, where Crystal Dynamics, we know that they're already working on Shadow of the Tomb Raider because of that leak from the subway. I don't know if you remember that from last year, where a guy from Crystal Dynamics was working on the game on his laptop on a subway, and some fan took a photo of his screen.
Yeah.
It leaked the title of the game. But so, and similarly with Deus Ex, I think there have been analyses I've read of Mankind Divided, and of course its story heavily, like Mankind Divided just felt like to use a Harry Potter analogy, like a Half-Blood Prince kind of game, where there's so clearly a second half that was probably sort
Hmm.
of being worked on at the same time, and then they split it into two games. At least that's my
Yeah.
feeling. So there's a decent chance that good headway's been made on their next games already, and then hopefully, if they do go this route of oscillating between the two, it would give each studio time to finish what it's currently working on.
Hmm.
But
Well, it
yeah, I
would make
certainly don't want Deus Ex to be delayed on behalf of this unknown
right.
quantity.
Well, it'd make you make you wonder too how they can't have just. I can't imagine that they just announced that they're doing multiple games for the Avengers and have not started any of that yet. Because otherwise, they're just basically making it kind of like a hopeless guarantee right now, or like there's because it's like, yeah, we're gonna make multiple games, and okay, how far are you? Well, we haven't started anything yet, so we don't even know how the process is gonna be because our studios haven't worked together yet, and there haven't. It's like, there hasn't been any of that process that's built in to see how they work together, what they're doing, or what their roles are, and like I'm sure there's lots of discussion. So I'd imagine they'd have to have been working on both projects simultaneously to some degree.
Some prototypes or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I would think it would be maybe two years out at the very earliest we would that they could be coming out. But I mean, I would expect 2 to 3 years before we saw something really concrete on what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, there was a message too. I don't know if it was in the video or a press release later that said look forward to more info in 2018.
Oh, did it?
Yeah,
Did
I
see?
want to
Yeah,
double check that, but it was like a kind of a whiplash. Like, whoa, okay,
yeah. Jeez.
very strange. But nevertheless exciting. I think at the end of the day, it just lends more credence to Marvel really caring when it comes to its video gaming corporations. I think it's going to
Hmm.
have this hands-on role, and as much as the Kingdom Hearts thing, as much as
I was
I'm
just gonna bring that back up before
I'm
before we
kind of a
went.
purist. Like I don't think that Marvel fits with the.
No, no.
It's
Well,
not
we
that I
have
don't
Big
want
Hero
them.
6. Big Hero 6 makes sense for that style.
Yeah, and that's fine because that's a
Yeah,
Disney movie, right? I
right.
mean
Well,
that makes sense.
it is a Marvel movie, and it was released as both.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
That's
Big Hero
interesting.
6 is based off of Marvel comics,
Oh,
so it technically is a Marvel movie. That's why, yeah. So there is a Marvel world in Kingdom Hearts. So they kind of that's why I thought it would be too when I first heard about that. I was like, oh, we're gonna get more of that.
interesting. Okay.
Because I mean, like, I think
Um,
a Guardians of the Galaxy one could be pretty entertaining, depending on how they handle it. You'd have to make the characters slightly more cartoony-ish, though, just to fit. I think just to fit it a little better. But I think the more they stay away from real people, the better.
yeah, because especially, well, and they've got some things to figure out with the Kingdom Hearts 3 engine anyway. I just finished playing Kingdom Hearts zero point 0.2, the Birth by Sleep sort of sequel episode
Hmm.
in this collection, and there are some characters that look pretty great, like Aqua and really the main cast. Mickey looks fine too, but then you see someone like Jensen, and you're like, oh my God, you are a nightmare. There's
Yeah.
just it's very inconsistent, right? Like they haven't really figured out what these people are going to look like on PS4.
Hmm.
So there's yeah, and I'm of the mind that the few attempts they did take toward realism, like with the Pirates of the Caribbean world, like those are the worst examples of what that series does really well. I think it's just the vision was the whimsy of Disney with the aesthetics of an RPG, and
Right.
like Marvel is not, in my definition, the whimsy of Disney. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's so
Yeah.
much
Well,
to draw from that they've never used. Like they've never used any Pixar film. I mean,
right.
Pocahontas, Moana, Frozen, Tangled. Like, it just goes on and on for stuff that
Yeah.
is open
They've
to
got
use.
no shortage of places to draw from within the Disney world.
Zootopia, like even the last 5 to 10 years since Kingdom Hearts 2, there's been just so many Disney films that have busted out with popularity.
Finding Nemo. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I think
Yep.
that'd be really entertaining. Um, but
They never
yeah,
did Pocahontas. Like,
yeah.
anyway,
That's, I was
yeah.
trying to think
So
of some other. I was trying to think of some others. But yeah, that's. I think I'm not shaken up. I think on the world options for Kingdom Hearts, not having Marvel, but the game right now, what I want to know most is that if Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal are working together, or if they're doing like you said and doing a trade off. Because I think a trade off might be more damaging for just continuity's sake. Because I think for like a Call of Duty type of thing, it's way easier to be swapping back and forth if you have like a basic. It's going to be the same shooter structure, and those studios do very similar things.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. And you certainly don't want it to become, well, yeah, I wonder what the contract is. Like, if is it 3 games? Because then I'm not too concerned about sort of the repetition that the Call of Duties and the
mm-hmm.
Battlefields of the world fell into.
I mean they've got what movies planned out through to like 2020, so they'll probably have a bunch of games planned out for
Yeah, I wonder how
years.
many I wonder how many people internally at Marvel are kind of like the tip of the spear with this video game charge, because you need consultants to like make sure the game's writing is up to snuff, make sure the characters aren't being misrepresented.
It's just Stanley.
It's just,
Yeah.
he's like the busiest man at the company somehow.
He just sits in a room and everyone comes to him and he has to. Uh, but yeah, that's. I think we have sufficient talk on the first topic. So
Yeah, definitely.
on to you, sir.
Yeah, for sure. I'll chime in. Why don't we do another new game announcement that's way, way on the other side of the technology space. This is the news that Leslie Benzies, the former president of Rockstar North, has split off on his own and announced a new video game called Everywhere that's going to use Amazon's game engine, Lumberyard.
Okay.
So there's a lot to unpack in that sentence.
Yeah. I don't know
Uh,
anything about this, so I'm.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of fill in the gaps then. So Everywhere is the game's, I should say, temporary title. It's prototype title. Benzies revealed that his studio has a long-term vision for the title, with the goal to create a platform where players can be entertained and also entertain others while blurring the lines between reality and a simulated world. This is from IGN's article on the game. This is kind of important because it's the first mainstream appearance of Amazon's game engine, which apparently is based on CryEngine.
Really?
It
Huh.
says here that Amazon licensed the engine from Crytek in 2015 for a reported 50 to 70 million dollars. Presumably they made some tweaks and now it's called Lumberyard. And then the flip side of this interesting coin is that Benzies left Rockstar North with somewhat tumultuous circumstances. It says here he eventually sued Take-Two Interactive for $150 million. I think this had something to do with GTA Online. I'm
Oh,
gonna
okay.
double check this. He says that the company tried to force him out. Yeah, he took a sabbatical in 2014, tried to go back to work in 2015, and his access cards had been deactivated. The company was trying to force him out. So there's this whole falling out. But what's the way the story goes? Leslie Benzies was primarily responsible for the concept and design of GTA Online, while the Hauser brothers were really far more interested in the story, the traditional campaign, and the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And GTA Online has proven over the years to just be this tremendous success. Like, it's the sole reason so many people are still buying and playing this game. They've
Yep.
made so much money through microtransactions. It's just become this runaway blowout success, even probably more than you could have predicted when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, details are scarce. I've pretty much told you everything there is to know about this game Everywhere, but it's kind of, I mean, a lot of people are sort of going the direction like this could be maybe the ultimate realization of the sort of shared space that GTA Online represented. Like, it might not be so criminal focused. It might not be, so heist and wealth and get your cars and your money type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it could follow in the footsteps of his previous project, being like a very intricate shared world where you sort of live a second life, and there's all kinds of features, ways to meet up, ways to communicate. So, yeah, as a topic, I just kind of wanted to mull on it for a bit, get your thoughts on the
Mm-hmm.
project, and then, what would you like to see, I guess, if we assume that GTA Online was just the precursor to some larger vision?
Well, do we know what platforms this is supposed to be on?
We know nothing about the game.
Okay, because when you said Amazon engine, I immediately thought mobile, and hearing somebody say
Right.
everywhere. So
I think it's some.
But
For
if you're doing a modified Crytek engine, you're not going to use it on mobile, I wouldn't think, because that
exactly.
would just be an absolute waste for the most part.
Yeah, I don't think Amazon would have paid so much for the engine if because they can make browser games and
I
mobile
mean,
games, anything.
Activision bought out King Games for 1.6 billion. What was it, 2 years ago, last year?
Can't say shit about that, I guess.
So yeah, but
Yeah, fair point. But assuming it's like a full scale console thing.
right.
Well,
So
yeah, it's
is this going to be
interesting.
leveraging VR? That would be my first
It's
thing.
an amazing question.
Because you're saying blurring the lines between reality and stuff, which sounds just extremely horrifying on some level.
Yeah,
But
it's one of those weird lines where like that line, the blurred lines between reality and simulation, is such a cliche that for him to use that in 2017 almost
right.
gives it more weight. It's like, okay, I wonder if he actually means something behind this, like VR, or
Mm-hmm.
like just taking what some games have been doing lately with giving you apps and stuff in the real world where you can manage your characters or manage your inventory, communicate with other players,
Yeah.
taking that to some next level where maybe you don't have the full game experience with you on the go, but there's some meaningful
Yeah.
way that you can interact with folks.
Yeah,
Or
that would be really cool. I mean, that's well, you continue, finish your point.
no, well, there was just I in that moment when I thought about the portability and the interaction everywhere, I thought of the game's title everywhere, and I thought, well, the strongest example in my mind of something that has blurred lines between reality and simulation is Pokemon Go.
Mm-hmm.
Having like literally a game playing out in physical space, requiring you to travel, requiring you to move about, and yet having game mechanics. So, that's also a fair way to look at it. Like maybe is this something that will exist in the real world, but then this new Amazon engine will take things up to another level graphically. Maybe it will play out on mobile devices, but look insanely great, or tablets.
Yeah.
It's very hard to say.
I mean, I'm still waiting for like a dedicated peripheral of having it being through some kind of like some basically like a smart glass or like Google Glass type things
Right.
where you just have
Yeah.
regular glasses on and maybe all the processing takes place on your smartphone and projects it onto a screen on these glasses and stuff like that. But
Yeah, it'd be funny if the website for this game had like, order your glasses, let us know your prescription.
yeah, um, what was it? Oh, that if this is going to be heavily inspired by a lot of the same type of basic gaming principles of Grand Theft Auto Online, and you
Sure.
have something that is like where you have an in-game phone and you have all the apps in your phone. If they created an app that was just for if you use that app in game to communicate with the other players and on other accounts and stuff around you, if they made a mobile app that was that just recreated that phone on your own personal phone and could communicate that way, that would be, I mean, that would definitely be blurring the lines of reality,
Yeah, absolutely.
and that could be something that would be really well done. Um, I guess it would depend. Huh. See, there's a lot of challenges that would be associated with this in a number of areas. Where is this going to be as well? It depends if it's going to be like a first person or third person, or what the focus is. If it's going to be basically kind of like a world simulator, or if it's going to be more Grand Theft Auto like.
Right.
Because if it's going to be, if they want to blur the lines of reality and non-reality, and you're going to be going around and you're blowing people up and murdering them left and right and all these things, you're going to have a lot of backlash from pretty much everywhere in the industry and
Yeah.
without.
I mean,
So
it
it's
does.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
those actions playing out in a physical space. I mean, even if like the gunshots are virtual or the crimes are virtual, like you're still like going to your local park and like committing a digital crime. Like something very, very
yeah. If
weird.
it's contained within a game world, then it's I don't see that being an issue. But if you're like if we were talking about like if it's going to be kind of like a Pokemon Go type of thing, and then you're doing like Grand Theft Auto shit out in public, that's gonna turn some heads. Uh, yeah, I guess it's. I think if you can do something, well, I'd imagine this has to be on consoles, has to be on home consoles for like 80. Well, I'd say the whole thing is going to be. I would be kind of surprised if there's a mobile. Com- I could see it being companion apps, but not anything where you can really play it on mobile.
Right.
But if you're sitting in your living room playing this stuff, and it's basically just a lot of the same thing as a Grand Theft Auto Online, but maybe have some more it's a different type of focus to it, where it's not just a direct clone, where it's not just like doing like the bank heists or all the stuff like that, but you're doing more focused on interacting with a community and building yourself up. Like I could see like doing like focusing on the business aspect and doing things like that, and like creating a business within the game world and like getting your own apartment and like that kind of stuff. Because
Right.
people, that's I mean that's huge for the Grand Theft Auto, where it's like people fighting to get like really cool stuff in the game
Yeah,
world.
yeah, the customization for that for sure is just crazy. I mean, I keep coming back to the name, and I'm thinking like, okay, if we take away the element of it takes place in the real world, something like Pokemon Go, maybe without taking place in the real world, it still leverages the real world, like
Mm,
for locations, like maybe you
right.
can't have a Fifth Avenue apartment in real life, but basically the
Yeah.
game launches and then everybody starts from zero, and you have to like work your way up in the world sort of virtually, but it uses Google Maps or something to like
Right.
populate the Earth with things to do.
Yeah, which could be really cool, where you have uh, I have no idea how even remotely reasonable any of this would be. But if you had it where people are playing all around the world, and you have their location be reflective of where they actually live, like the
Right.
environments, all this stuff. So you'd be like, if you're if you're in Tokyo, then the world that you start in is Tokyo, like a digital Tokyo. If you're in, or if you're near a major city, it's going to focus on that major city that you're closest to, for the
Right.
most part, or that type of environment.
Sure. Sure.
And then you could actually, if you, it'd be really cool if you could just like as your character in game, you could earn money or whatever, take trips to different locations and see where they are, or drive over to different places and like interact with people building their own. Like, let's say say that like where I am, I started in Chicago and you started in Minneapolis
Hmm.
or something like that, and then we could each within the virtual world create our own apartments, customize or whatever like that. But then you could travel to each your friends' locations and see what they've done in those areas.
Yeah, I kind of thought that they might leverage like with big ambitious games, so often they turn to things like cloud downloads where I mean, I think about, well, maybe No Man's Sky isn't a great example because it was all sort of randomly generated, but you could have a thing where pretty much exactly what you're saying, Chicago, well, let's just say the entire Earth at the game's inception is just sort of roughly approximated using satellite data. Like the
Mm-hmm.
textures are kind of poor and everything, but then the game engine comes in, slaps polish over things, like it recognizes, okay, this shoddily rendered clump of green and brown, let's make those pine trees, right? And
Yeah.
it kind of cleans up the earth in that way. But then you playing in your local area, you're only having to download maybe 20 or maybe like 10 gigs at a time. Like that's the city of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to travel to Minneapolis, like you hop on a plane and then it like streams the data. So in a way, like you wouldn't have to have like this 10 terabyte game. You could just have it be clumped, and where you are physically located, that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
where you start, like you said, and then it uses satellite data to sort of, because that's what I keep coming back to, like choosing the title everywhere. Because it was always fun to think about what if Grand Theft Auto was like the whole country, right? And
Yeah.
you could fly
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. And this sort of seems like maybe the genesis of this is using technology to achieve that same thing, which would just be incredibly cool.
Yeah. Well,
But it
do
but
when
it would need good game systems though
oh yeah, yeah.
to actually have fun playing it.
Did we get a hint at when we'd find out more on this title?
Not in the article I'm looking at. Again, I was referencing IGN's piece, so
Mm-hmm.
it's an odd announcement in the fact that it's got a good amount of detail. Like it's got this Amazon component, it's got the Leslie Benzies story behind it, and yet it really just was a sort of come and go announcement, not unlike the Avengers, where there wasn't much more to draw from it.
All right. Well, I'm interested to hear more and figure out
Yeah,
what the
definitely.
what the hell it's about.
Yeah, no doubt.
Um, but yeah, I'll go on to my next one then. It's kind of a combination what I'll be starting with. So this is gonna kind of. I was having this thought. We're going off of two different trailers. We can digest each one of them maybe a little bit first, and then I'll throw in my joint question to both of them at the end.
Sure.
First one is we got a new Mass Effect trailer.
Yes. Yes,
Um,
indeed.
I watched it. I mean, I watched it a handful of times since it came out. I honestly was not as excited as I was hoping it would be, for a couple different reasons. But the biggest thing right now is that it literally felt like a copy paste of the team of from
Oh,
like the original
with,
series.
with the races,
Well, just with that,
with
well,
the speeches.
you've got the main person, you've got a female Asari, you've got a male Krogan, you've got a black guy, and you got a white girl on your team, and they all look
Yeah,
very similar in a lot of ways. And
yeah.
there was no, and it was like, okay, this is like I was hoping for something interesting, but whatever. And even just like the twins look fairly similar to
Mhm.
like the default looking main characters of the previous game. So
I
that
mean,
was
if I may, like
yeah,
in general, I think, it does speak to just, whether you personally as a gamer put a lot of value into whether it's the same characters or not. Like maybe you love all those races and you just want more of them. It does seem to me kind of like retreading old ground. And I got the same feeling
hmm
for sure, just like echoes of the past. And it's like, okay, is Andromeda just sort of
yeah,
a revisiting of
yeah.
what we already loved? Like it seems super safe. You could even
You're going. We're
there's
gonna take it to a completely new galaxy and all this stuff, but everyone's the same.
yeah,
And it's like,
Shepard
and even
2.0.
just like even Ket Archon, like the Ket are a new race, so the evil race, and the Archon sounds exactly like Harbinger.
Yeah, he does.
The
Yeah, he does. Yeah, just a deep gravelly
It's just like
bass pumped voice. I know.
okay,
Yeah, I don't know. It is a little, I
it's,
guess, wait and see approach, but
yeah,
part of me was hoping for maybe you create your character. I know this, of course. I knew Ryder was
yeah.
the main character a long time ago, and yet it's like, what is an RPG if not a chance to role play as a character? And then so many games have a system where the world adapts around you, so you could be a Solarian or a Turian or an Asari main character
hmm
and have dialogue and events change to reflect that. But anyway, yeah, I got the
yeah.
same feeling.
So yeah, it was that, and then I honestly didn't. I thought it was gonna for character animations and stuff. Maybe it's just because of the things that I've been playing recently. It just felt like it didn't make that much of a leap from the past games. And I
Yeah,
think it was just for this big action pack. Like it was supposed to be really. It was supposed to be a cinematic trailer, is what it was supposed to be. But they did it all in engine, which is pretty cool for what they were able to do. But it just kind of felt. It felt like it didn't quite reach where they wanted to doing it that way. But and this is kind of setting up to my other point later on after I talk about the other trailer. But it was just kind of a weird, like there was like the kind of thrown in kissing scene in there, and then like them trying to be like really intense looking, but it looked like they were just kind of more mannequin posed than anything, and it was like just a. It was something where I know that as soon as I start playing the game and I get used to that, how the world is, just I mean, as itself, that it's like that's not something that would bother me at all. But just coming straight from like other media and other games right now, or what I've been looking at a lot, it just looks like it's a downgrade.
yeah, even something like Final Fantasy 15 had, I would say, a really amazing animation.
Yeah, and just
And
like well,
yeah,
even like The Witcher and stuff. Since I went back and just played the beginning of that again, it was just like there were that's a huge world, lots of characters, and they don't necessarily make the best movements or something, but it's definitely seemed a lot more lifelike than what was in that trailer.
that's something that I've always kind of there always was a tinge of that beneath the Mass Effect engine, and I did
Yeah.
think that going into Andromeda you would get kind of a shakeup of that. Like we're using Frostbite now, we're using new animations now, but yeah, in general with the characters and the animations, I do feel like Andromeda is like fresh coat of paint on existing conventions.
Yeah, so
That's
that's kind of my biggest concern right now. I think it's going to be, well, I would assume that it's going to be a very good game, given how the other ones are, where it's just going to, you're going to get, it's going to be much, I don't know how the story is going to play out, honestly, from if that's going to be really what sells it or if it's just going to be really polished gameplay. Because that's what the series really is to me, is just like a really cool world and really polished gameplay. The story is pretty decent,
yeah.
but we are learning. One thing I was happy to see in that is that it's not just all old. Is that we do have two new races that showed up. We have the Ket, which are the evil race that's in there, and the Angara, which are they've kind of like they look like they're have aesthetically inspired by snakes to some degree, with like the kind of like a hooded, so it's almost hooded, and then they've got the uh, bovine legs and stuff where they're
Hmm.
and all that kind of thing. But they don't look really timid. They look pretty sturdy as a race, and they definitely don't shy away from when Ryder steps in and they come right up to his face and basically just interrogate him. So
Yeah,
they
definitely.
seem like an interesting group, which I was happy to see that kind of character. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Any other quick thoughts on that before we move on
Not
move on?
particularly. No, I think it'll, in line with what you're saying about, a questionable level of quality. I think because it is Mass Effect, because it is BioWare, there will be just a baseline level of good,
Yeah,
like solid RPG mechanics, interesting character development, fairly well written. It's just a question of how far beyond that they can reach. But I think with anything BioWare, there's kind of this baseline AAA, like 7 out of 10 quality. Then we'll see what comes from there.
all right. So then the other trailer is actually for a game that I was really disappointed about when we first saw it come back at E3, and that would be Prey. And the reason I was upset about that before was because the Prey 2 that we were promised with a trailer years ago got completely scrapped, which was going to be like this cool badass like space cowboy adventure, or like bounty
Hmm.
hunter running through the cities and all this stuff. And then we went back to a game that was focusing more on the paranormal, I guess, and like more creatures, kind of like not. Well, from what I initially saw, it seemed like it was going to be very much a heavy horror game. And this is going to be is in development by Arcane Studios. We got a new trailer for it, and I honestly, seeing this trailer, I was got pretty pumped by it because it wasn't just there are a lot of horror elements to it, but it's not. It's more of an action horror like shoot. What really stood out to me was that it's got just immediate character and style to it,
Hmm.
and the weapons and the option, the interaction and the environment was like it's got like Ratchet and Clank levels of weapon diversity, which is super exciting. And then it's got a lot of ways that your character himself can interact with the environment or the things that are around him, very much on the page of the studio's previous games, which would be Dishonored, where you can just
Right.
kind of like you see one of the parts of the trailer, he like jumps in, like he kind of like you see him kind of like go into like this turret, basically, like not like get in a turret and start shooting. He like ethereally transfers himself into it and controls it that way.
Sort of occupies it.
Yeah, and like there are a lot of just a lot of really unique, very colorful, vibrant world. It's not like it doesn't follow the tropes of what you think of when you hear horror game, where it's just all dark and like all the lights are out, and it's like there's just a lot of uniqueness to this game that's honestly really refreshing considering what I've been going into, where it's a more like adventure shooter type of game with what seems like a very what's going to have a very interesting story associated with it. Not just like a guy waking up in an abandoned station and there's creatures there, and then he hears like little recorded messages or whatever. Like there are people he's
Yeah.
interacting with that know exactly what's going on, and you basically there's a setup to like these creatures that are here that the Typhon, or no, you're on Typhon. Oh no, yeah, that's what it is. Typhon are the creatures, and they were captured on this space station that you're at, and then they escape. So you had them contained, and you're testing them for stuff, and you get abilities from them as you go on, and all. So anyway, there's lots of stuff with that.
Yeah, it sort of seems like I'm watching the trailer in the background here because I hadn't seen it coming in, but it's there's a few different things striking me. There's some BioShock in there.
Yeah.
There's some Dishonored in there. There's some aliens in there. Like
Hmm.
it's if I had to pin it down, it's almost like BioShock meets Aliens with a horror vibe with surprised, grotesque creatures and yet really inventive powers.
Yeah.
A really colorful world that seems very purposely built. Like there could be some really good world building going on
Yeah.
here.
So that's what I'm really excited about. And as far since you're watching this too, as far as I could tell, I think for the most part, it is in game,
Yeah, I
like
would
in
say
game
so. I
engine.
think there's a little moment of pre-rendered cutscene in the beginning, like when he leans and looks at himself in the mirror. I have a
Right.
hard time believing that's real time, but for the
Hmm.
second half, it looks like all the gameplay is real time.
Yeah. So.
Plus, it's coming out in May, which is super soon.
Hmm. Oh yeah. That's also another thing that we're really looking forward to. But I think kind of what my I was pulling away from some of this. I don't think Prey did a lot of CG stuff in that trailer specifically, but for something like Mass Effect, it clearly was. It clearly was. It was trying to showcase what it has, but it was trying to present it in a way that most studios would handle as a CG trailer. So
Sure.
when is the time? And I know every time when a CG trailer comes out, we always say like, well,
We always complain and
yeah,
stuff.
we always complain like, well, it's like, well, we didn't see anything from the game, but it's
Sure.
just like,
Well, yeah.
is there a good medium where you can mix it and make it? See, this
Um,
is it. This is where's the place for CG trailers? I think that's kind of where it comes down to. Is it dependent on the type of game that's being shown, just to make it more interesting?
I
Not
think
more
it.
interesting, but just to basically showcase the vision more clearly than seeing a game like Bioshock. You have to be, or not Bioshock, game like Mass Effect. You have to be in that world. It's designed for you to be in that world for a long time. So a lot of the things that I like initially complained about a little while ago would not be issues if I started the game from the beginning, started playing through it,
Right.
and you just become accustomed to it, and they design the world to work with it, to work to basically they highlight the important parts of the game so that any deficiencies it may or may not have don't get basically can get overlooked because they know how to focus it. Whereas if you show like a little snippet and broadcast to the public, you're not letting your game show as truly as it would otherwise. Where like a game like Prey, it's fairly straightforward in terms of what's going to be happening. The story is going to be very unique, but that's better tailored to just taking like little screenshots quick of showing like the guns in action and like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, little snippets of gameplay. Um, I I feel like the intent behind the marketing is what matters here. I think as a consumer, as somebody who would watch these and I walk away from them with a certain feeling, I like most and I think the most appropriate use of a CG trailer is when there's something about the game's mood or atmosphere that you want to convey as a selling point. So I think it
Hmm.
tends to skew more toward narrative games where there's an element of maybe something like The Last of Us would be a good example. Like if we think about The Last of Us 1, where nobody knows what
Hmm.
this is, it's Naughty Dog, you know, the Uncharted studio. You want, I think, at least one CG cinematic trailer, and the CG here is really just to sell people on like it's really just to create a movie, right? Like you want
Yeah,
this 2 minute movie to be
it's the
polished.
first. It's basically like pitching your idea to a board.
Yes.
You want to capture exactly what the idea is that you have in the best way possible.
And you understand that there's an audience for somber, serious, post-apocalyptic narrative about a father-daughter type of relationship, and you want to convey some of that melancholy
Hmm.
more so than gameplay. Like that's what it accomplishes to me. A well-done CG trailer sells and conveys story and mood in the same way that a gameplay trailer sells you on the actual content and how it will feel and play and what you'll be doing. So in a case like it's weird with a game like Mass Effect because I don't think that many people are waiting in the wings expecting this kind of surprising narrative, with oh my God, there's all this deep emotional core that I wasn't expecting, or this
Hmm.
commentary on society. It's like Mass Effect has bits and pieces of that, but it's more so just a sci-fi epic
Yeah.
with blockbuster stakes.
Hmm.
So I think with Mass Effect, the thing you really need to convey to the skeptical consumer is here are all these RPG elements that maybe you were worried we'd remove, right? Here's your skill trees, here's your vast universe, here's your cast of 10 party members. So in that sense, it steers
Hmm.
away from a CG trailer and more toward snippets of gameplay. I think what Mass Effect tried or what BioWare tried to do with this one was sort of a weird hybrid of them where
Hmm.
like you said, that the whole aim was to be cinematic and to introduce people and to introduce this emotional core between them. But like I've never had any doubts that there would be a big, interesting cast. My
Hmm.
any skepticism I have for Andromeda is totally gameplay based. Like,
Right.
is there attention to detail on cooldowns and abilities, and is it going to feel like a rewarding, satisfying RPG?
Hmm.
Prey, on the other hand is the exact opposite, where, like you said, you kind of came in as a skeptic because there was a version of Prey that you were sorely missing, and what they managed to do with this trailer was really sell you on what makes this one special, which is its surreal horror, which is its colorful space horror, which is like a
Hmm.
totally unique thing. And granted, Prey is also kind of a gameplay trailer, but um,
Right. Well, that was the thing is that Mass Effect was like, we're at the point where we need a gameplay trailer for Mass Effect, I think. And
mhm,
what they just released was all in-game footage without the gameplay.
yes,
So they just did a cinematic trailer, but it was not. That's the thing. Well, I think personally, kind of what we after what we are talking about, I think the place and time for CG trailers is that I think you can get away with doing one or two CG trailers, but that would be at the very start of your first kind of rollout of showcasing the game.
hmm,
Where like what we've said, whereas basically it's like it's your pitch to the public on this is the spirit of this game, and this is what
yes,
we see it as. And you can do that a couple times, and then you have to be doing. Then I think you should do something like you can do a cinematic one, but I think where it's focusing on some of the story, if there is a focus on it for that particular game. But I really, really like how they treated the Prey trailer, where they do have, and like obviously it's not the first time this has ever happened. There's lots of other games that have done this really well, but they did a great, had a great balance of the story and the feel of the game and the gameplay that you can look forward to without spoiling anything.
yeah, I agree for
So
sure.
it's like that was a really, really good balance, and that was exactly what I needed as a gamer to see something like that and be like, okay, I'm on board because I feel like I understand what this game is.
Right.
Where Mass Effect is still Mass Effect Andromeda is very much pushing on the fact. It seems very much leaning on the fact that people know what the game is going to be like, and I'm personally I'm not okay with that really. You need to treat your every game that you make and show off. So I mean, so that's why I'm kind of leaning where we need another gameplay trailer, or need a gameplay trailer for it before it comes out.
Yeah, that's almost just a confidence thing because there's elements of gameplay with Mass Effect that people haven't been pleased with. There's been
Hmm.
somewhat, I would think, overblown complaints about the story and the ending and stuff like that. But there's
Yeah.
valid reasons to say, oh, I didn't like how Mass Effect did this with the Infiltrator style, or I didn't like how Mass Effect did this with the Mass Effect 3 did this with character development. So
Yeah.
there's a chance to fix that up. But it's also like it's weird. Like the Prey trailer, despite being a series of gameplay snippets, felt more cinematic to me
Right. Yeah.
than BioWare's trailer. And I think like if you, yeah, there's a point at which you can. It's okay to go CG when I think back to your earlier point about how once you get into Mass Effect and you adjust to that universe and that engine, it's with any game. A couple
Yeah.
hours in and you don't notice it
Right.
anymore.
Yeah. We're not saying that we have to. I'm not saying that you have to force yourself to adjust to a game to Mass Effect because it's bad or anything. It's just like, yeah, it's like you said,
No,
any
every
game,
game's like
any every single game that you play,
yeah.
you have to
Kingdom Hearts felt really weird to me after replaying The Witcher. I was like, oh my God, what is
I
this?
bet.
But there's that's an interesting point for marketing where that doesn't always you can't get used to that in a 2 minute trailer. Like you just sit down for this super quick digest, and if you're distracted by how character animations look, then I think the trailer has in some ways failed.
Yep.
So that's where a CG trailer can help you, where you're trying to convey camaraderie between party members or
Hmm.
just this exciting new cast that'll take you on your journey. But if your engine is one of those that just maybe needs that 20 minutes of adjustment, then need to understand that and know that there's going to be an element of distraction in your trailer where people are looking at it for the wrong reasons, and
Yeah.
that might be a good time to use CG instead. Whereas with gameplay, I mean, Mass Effect over the shoulder, like nobody's picking that apart for animations. I think it's in the cutscenes and
Right.
stuff where folks pay more attention.
Yeah, and that's honestly why I was kind of surprised that there wasn't. I mean, there were a couple of scenes that they had in where they were at the beginning of the trailer where they're setting up, like they're looking at the new world that they're hoping they can populate, and they're looking at then they've tried to send in, and then the Archon comes in over the radio and all this stuff. But I think they it would have been great to cut off there. Maybe have some interjections of some other scenes, or see like that the one scene where the race comes towards him, and the what are they called? The Angari, I think is the name. Angara. When they walk towards him, and like you see there were a couple of key scenes in that I think they should have worked with, but then everything else should have been spliced in with like the over the shoulder shooting, any like matchups where you see some of the environments that you're going to be in, you see how the combat's going to look, show off maybe a specific weapon. Like that's what I think Prey did really really well in that, was that they showed you the entire package in just a really short amount of time,
Yeah, for sure.
but they didn't ruin anything. I didn't feel like I got spoiled by anything. I didn't feel like there was anything that was necessarily lacking in it. It just made me think that this is the this is the starting if this is the starting point for this game, I'm can't wait to see where it goes from there. That's kind of what I came away from it. For
Yeah,
Mass
I felt
Effect, it's just more just like a mystery at this point.
yeah, ironically, because they do kind of spoil, like, here's a planet you'll go to, here's something that happens in a cutscene. Yeah, with
Hmm.
Prey, it's like the world kind of bleeds into that too, where you are exploring, as far as I know, excuse me, this very large space station. And so it's kind of hard to spoil what those brief moments mean in a broader context. Whereas with
Right.
Mass Effect, now you know, all right, I'm going to go to a planet that looks like this, this
Yeah.
cavernous desert or this lush forest or this glowing cave.
Right.
Like, really, you've had like 5 or 6 planets spoiled for you already if you've been watching every Mass Effect trailer.
Hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, I think we're kind of falling on the same side of the fence. I think it's all about tone, tone and story, and trying to accomplish convey a certain emotion with your CG trailer, and maybe sometimes using it as an excuse for not letting your engine distract people.
Yeah. The one thing that really just kind of irked me in the Mass Effect one was where they reused the line about that. Was it like they don't need an army? I don't need an army. I have a Krogan. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my god, it's just like just rip that directly from just talking about the Avengers. It's just like, oh god,
Yeah, yeah, that's
just
true.
completely ripped that from there. It's like, ah,
Yeah, it was camp. It was definitely
it
very, very
was
camp.
the amount of cheese that came out of that. It was just like, oh. And that actually was very disheartening to me, because I was like, if that's gonna be the tone of this, it's like I'm all you know me, I'm all for puns, but they're just cheesy lines. But if that's gonna be in your main trailer leading up to the game, it's just like, I hope that's not like an every conversation type of thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Just so. But anyway, you got one more topic for us?
Yeah, I do. Maybe a nice little palate cleanser. I don't know if there's a ton to say on it, but it's been a little bit since we talked about Kojima, so
Oh,
let's jump back into that.
Kojima-san.
Kojima-san! Such a good in joke.
Mm-hmm.
So here's just a little piece of news. We found out this past week that Guillermo del Toro has no creative involvement in the development
Mm-hmm.
of Death Stranding. This is from our PSU article on the matter. Speaking to IGN, Del Toro confirmed that he is indeed appearing in the Hideo Kojima game, but does not have any creative involvement in the title. He basically says, Kojima-san called me and said, I want you to be a character in the game. And I said, gladly. He's
Mm-hmm.
discussed his ideas so I could understand the character, but other than that, I'm not involved creatively at all. This is entirely Kojima-san's game. I think it's going to be a fantastic game 100%. I'm just a puppet in his hands.
Yep.
My contribution is limited to being a cheerleader for his ideas and being scanned for long hours at a time. That's about it. So, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of a factual reveal about what's going on behind the scenes there. Not entirely unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
It would be kind of almost the opposite of Kojima-esque for him to so intimately involve somebody in the writing and the planning process. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily how he works as an auteur of video games.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if that carries over to the other players. I wonder if Norman has any creative input or if Mads Mikkelsen has any creative input. Because if they don't, if it's just a triage of
Yeah.
three Kojima disciples who have signed up to be featured in the game, I gotta wonder, like, what about Kojima just attracts these actors to him and they just like sign over their likenesses
Mm-hmm.
so readily and they hang out with him, like they're always tweeting photos together. Like I just saw a photo on Kojima's feed of he and Norman hanging out at a restaurant. I'm like, what is the deal with this posse, you know?
Yeah, no kidding. I would almost guarantee that they don't have any say.
Mhm.
And I think that's really, really cool. Like, I think I'd almost be a little more skeptical of what this, who, who the hell knows what the game is anyway. But I would be almost more skeptical if there were other people with hands in the pot and what was going to be said or done or what the creative decisions were. Where collaborations sometimes create the best content, but I think it'd be really refreshing just to see Kojima totally unrestrained in his own idea and to see what he comes up with and really either to really showcase what he can do or what he can come up with,
Mm.
and it'd just be a great whether I mean it'd just be a great experiment almost just to see from as an outsider to see what he does without virtually without limitations.
Which I feel like is what we're getting between
Yeah.
Sony bringing him around to go engine shopping and
Yeah.
Gorilla just handing over the flash drive of their code. They're
Yeah.
sort of a thousand truths,
Yeah.
figuratively.
Hmm.
There's I want to know what his pitch to these actors was, Like I want to know how he was so able to get these huge Hollywood names to sign on for his project and how long he's been courting them, really. And
Hmm.
there's also an element of like if this the notion that he was able to get such famous people to sign up for this project, to sign over their likeness and their voice and to something that is just so blatantly weird. Like it's
Hmm.
weirder on its own than anything any of these three people have ever done, including Del Toro, which is saying something.
Yeah.
Um you gotta wonder if like they were individually aware of his legacy even before he approached them. Like it does make me start to question like how much does the world of video games very best authors, its very best creators and
Hmm.
storytellers, like your Kojimas, your Neil Druckmanns and stuff. Is there starting to be some bleed over where even Hollywood actors are just tangentially aware of the innovations happening in
Hmm.
that space? I guess it wouldn't surprise me if you said like Mads Mikkelsen was a Metal Gear Solid fan before Kojima approached him, right? Or Norman was aware of Kojima's legacy before he
Hmm.
approached him. It feels like there has to be some of that for them to so easily sign up for the project.
Well, I would think that I would be pretty surprised if Mads Mikkelsen knew anything about video games really in general before. He very very well have, but I haven't looked into that. But I think Norman Reedus was familiar with him before they did the Silent Hill or what, not Silent Hill. Well, yeah, it was the spin-off, the PT
Yeah.
thing that they were working on. I think he did know of him, but yeah, it's just to to basically get, and I haven't heard Mads Mikkelsen speak on this at all, or what he's had his thoughts on working on this project, but it's just like it totally just feels like the perfect vibe for him from when he showed up in that trailer. Like
Sure, yeah.
it seemed like just like he seemed like the most perfect person to have in that spot.
It was like Lashif and Hannibal had a baby times
Yeah,
10,
yeah. So it's just like it was.
complete with the bloody eyes and everything.
Yeah, I think it's honestly, I think right now what it came down to is that Kojima had already convinced Del Toro of just like basically how awesome he is.
Yeah, I mean that's instant
And
red, I suppose.
yeah, and I think he just going around, they probably had conversations on who they thought would be really great for some of these places, or maybe Kojima's just was a fan of these actors for a long time and wanted to approach them. But
I think there's an element of that, and he does tweet about La La Land and Ryan Gosling quite a bit, so I'm just waiting for like the Ryan Gosling secondary character
yeah,
announcement. Um, but yeah, it's just it all it is to me is it's setting up Death Stranding to be the kind of ultimate project of a true auteur in video games,
yeah,
and I don't know that we have very many of those. I think
hmm
you could point to Kojima, obviously. You could point to Druckmann and Bruce Straley. You could point to Ken Levine at his peak with the
yep,
BioShock games. And there's been some others throughout history. Warren Spector with Deus Ex and stuff like that. But it's not like Hollywood where there's just a league of auteurs who
hmm
have unrestrained freedom. And in fact, unrestrained freedom is pretty rare in the industry. So
yeah,
that's what makes Death Stranding so interesting.
and just the fact that the choice of using someone like Del Toro as an actor
Yeah, for sure. That's
is just
interesting
that's
too.
really really interesting to me. Yeah, and really cool to see that basically that immediate support to be involved in that from Del Toro's side, where he's just like, you want me just to run around and hold a random test tube where a baby appears in it? Sure, just like without hesitation, and just like
Such
yeah,
a it's like such a great phone call. I want you to be in the game and running around holding a baby.
yeah. I want to know how
Gladly.
long it took for Kojima to explain his ideas to the people that are involved in
Oh, you
this.
gotta
Like,
wonder, right? Because
yeah,
they probably are aware
like
of
how much
most of the script, I would say.
yeah,
You could,
or just like how much time it took for him to convince somebody that he wasn't insane, or that there was actually a point to what he was doing, and just
yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. And then he has the ultimate challenge of convincing players that he's not insane, like when
yeah.
we actually get the game in our hands.
So
But yeah, it does lend confidence though. I think there's plenty of reason to be skeptical of Death Stranding. I mean, it is just somewhat objectively one of the weirdest things to ever come out of the game industry.
hmm
And you know, it's where's the gameplay? When's it going to come out? What is his budget? Like, what are his freedoms look like? There's plenty of reasons to be skeptical, but then moments like this lend confidence to the project where it's like clearly there's something here because these three people with reputations and careers have all staked a very prominent appearance in the game and they've signed on for it. They're
yeah,
okay with
I think
receiving
the key word was three people with careers chose to do this. It's just like
three people with lives and
yeah,
reputations. Yeah.
yeah, it's like,
Um, so yeah, well, it's just good. It left me with a positive note, and I'm glad to hear that things seem to be going pretty swimmingly.
yeah, and at the very least, I think. Well, I really, really hope on. I hope that the game is amazing, just because I want to play something that's amazing. But I also really hope that it does turn out to be a huge success for the people, for everyone involved, so that it's not just a footnote on their like IMDb pages, where it just
Yeah,
says like, "Oh, we were in this," where it's like known for this type of thing. Like I can't wait till that merging happens between games and movies on that level, where
right.
it's just like where that their appearance in a video game is on equal footing with their appearance in an HBO special or a movie of some kind. Just like that's going to be really cool, and that's really going to be when a lot of barriers start to break down.
Yeah, when you've got somebody's title card, like some future show that Norman Reedus stars in, it introduces Norman Reedus, star of The Walking Dead and Death Stranding. You know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing will be really powerful.
But yeah, I think that's going to be a long ways away yet, though. But
Fair enough.
all right,
Well, that's all I got for you.
okay. Well, I think that's interesting. I'm surprised we were able to find this much to
Yeah, we plumbed a
really
lot
go
of
off it.
news out of a somewhat slow feeling week.
Yeah, I'm kidding. So hopefully it keeps up. But
That's what we do.
yeah, that's what we do. Well, thanks everybody for listening. This has been episode 51 of PlayStation Fix. Be sure to stay tuned to psu.com for all of your PlayStation related news, reviews, and features out there. You can find PlayStation Fix there. You can find it on SoundCloud and on iTunes and on PlayStation Universe's YouTube channel, PS YouTube. You can follow PlayStation Universe on Twitter at PSUDOTCOM, so at PSU.com. And yeah, thanks for joining me as always, Kyle.
Yeah, cheers, man.
Yeah, so, and thanks for listening to this episode, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.